Hello class, today we're going to be talking about some things that everyone knows and loves and especially loves to spend and have more of. Do we have any guesses on what we're going to be talking about? Food, okay. Yes, we're going to be talking about money today. So I want everyone to get out a couple blank pieces of paper. And on the top of one of your pieces of paper, I want you to write $100. So I want you guys to think, if I have given each of you $100 today, what would you go spend it on? You can buy whatever you want, but what would you spend it on? Clothing, okay. Food, shoes, okay, so kind of clothing, that whole area. You spend it on your car, okay, and let's do one more. The movies, okay, I would probably spend it on the movies too. So now I want you guys to think, if I was to give you $100 that would last a week, what would you spend that on? Gas is a good one. Still food and clothing, okay. Still the movies, all right. So we're not too worried about running out of money still. Now, what if I was to tell you that you had $100 to last you the whole entire month? That would seem pretty impossible, right? That would be pretty difficult. So now, how do we take X amount of money and make it last for X amount of time? Let's say a month. We would use something called a budget. So everyone at the top, budget. A budget is how we organize money into certain areas of spending to where we're not aimlessly spending more money on our wants rather than our needs. We have to have enough money for rent, groceries, gas, things that we have to spend money on each month. So there are 3 methods to budgeting, and we're gonna go over each one. The first method is the zero-based method. The zero-based method is when you are left with $0 left. So you have made such a perfect budget and you have followed it so well that you have $0 left to spend. The second budget is called the 50-30-20 method. The 50-30-20 method is a bunch of percentages. So we'll say 50% of your budget, your income, is going to go to your needs, okay? Then 30% is going to go to your wants, which would be your fast food, clothing, movie theater tickets. And then 20% of your income for that month will go towards savings, which are very important and we're about to talk more of. So first, let's go over what some of our needs are, okay? What are our needs? What are our wants? And what are our savings? Okay, let's get an example for needs. What would needs be? Groceries, okay. Groceries. Gas. Gas could be a need. Rent. Yes, rent is a need that we have to pay. We're going to say rent/utilities. Phone bill. Our phone bill is extremely important. And then how about we put electricity? We got to keep the lights on. Electricity. Now, let's go towards some of our wants. What would some of our wants be? Clothing, yes. Dining out. Entertainment, we'll put that instead of the movies. We'll put entertainment. So if you like to go to the movies or go bowling, or maybe you want to go to a bungee or a jumping where like pump it up, or wherever you go jump. We could also say another want would be not a need, but a want. We could say subscriptions. Now, what about savings? What would some of our savings be? Emergency funds, yes. Put emergency. You could save towards maybe a new car. Yeah, so we'll say our goals. What about financial freedom? So we're not wasting so much money on things and we're just stuck in the same loop of budgeting and saving and spending, budgeting, saving, spending. What if the purpose of saving is so one day we don't have to worry about it so much? That would be financial freedom. Now, let's go over quickly some key terms to know when you're budgeting. We're only going to go over a few. Let's get out our piece of paper again and make sure we're copying these. So the first key term we're going to go over is income. I think we all know what our income is. What is income? The total amount of money that you earn or receive. So our amount of money that we have, amount of money that we are making from our jobs. Expenses. Expenses is really important. I want you to star this one, put a big star by it. We have two types of expenses. Okay, the first one is called a fixed expense. What is a fixed expense? It's an expense that does not change from month to month. So an expense that does not change. So that would be our rent, our utilities bill, our electric bill, our phone bill, a lot of those bills that we have to pay month to month. The other one would be a variable expense. What is a variable expense? An expense that does change. So we'll put an expense that fluctuates month to month. Fluctuates means changes. It can differ. So an expense that fluctuates. Okay, next we're going to go over savings. Savings is money put aside for future use. Savings are very important. That's how we reach our goals. It's how we save up for important or big purchases. Okay, next we're going to go over debt. Debt is a word that nobody likes very much. Debt is money that is owed to others. Money that is owed to others. So for example, credit card debt, loans. Loans are very important. Some of you are preparing to start paying student loans very soon. Another one that we're going to go over is deficit. So a budget deficit. A budget deficit is when expenses exceed income. So we are not making enough money to pay for all of the expenses. This is a situation where we have to usually start budgeting or follow our budget more strictly. Probably even reevaluate the whole budget altogether too. Maybe we're spending too much money on our wants rather than our needs. The next one is a surplus, a budget surplus. We love a budget surplus. This is when income exceeds expenses. Income exceeds expenses. This is when we have more than $0 left in our budget after we are done. So get a new piece of paper out. We're going to quickly go over some of our fixed versus variable expenses. So at the top, I want you to write fixed versus variable and underline them. Some of our fixed expenses would be rent, mortgage, phone bill, electricity, maybe utilities, and let's say car payment. Now, what about variable expenses? groceries, entertainment. Maybe one month you want to go bowling and the next you want to go to the movies. That can change. Gas. Gas is an expense we will always have, but it tends to change. Another variable expense could be clothing, shopping. And then we could say dining out, which you could say goes hand in hand with groceries, but so that's the difference between a fixed and variable expense. Something you guys are very familiar with for fixed expenses would also be your subscriptions. So maybe you subscribe to certain apps on your phone or certain streaming services, maybe like Netflix, Hulu. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. We all love Netflix, maybe Disney Plus. Okay, next we're gonna go over some different types of budgets. So the first budget, I know we went over some of those methods. The first budget, I'm gonna lay it out for you. This would be a zero-based budget. So let's go ahead and write $0 down here. Make sure you're copying this. $0 here at the bottom, this is what we're gonna be left with. So for example, we will have expenses on the left. We will have our budget amount in the middle, and we will have our actual amount on the far right. So our budget amount is our goal, our spending goal for that item, and our actual amount is what we actually ended up paying for it. So let's say our first one, let's say we have $300 to spend, for example. This is not realistic, but we're gonna have an example. So our first expense is gonna be rent. Okay, so let's say our budget for rent was, we said, okay, rent is gonna be $75, and we ended up paying $75 for it because it doesn't change. Then let's say groceries. Let's say we budgeted $50 for groceries and we ended up paying $60, okay? So far, our budget says that we should only have spent $125 and we have actually spent $135. So we are over. So we have $135 out of 300 already spent. That means we have about $260 something left. So let's say next we have let's say a gym membership. We know the gym membership is $50. We spent $50 on it. So now we have spent $135 and we have spent $185 so far. So this means that we have $100 left to spend still, plus the $15. So now let's say shopping. Let's say we have $15 budgeted for shopping and we ended up spending $20. Okay, so that means now we have $95 left to spend. So what could be $95? Well, we could say $95 to go towards savings. 95, and we ended up spending 95. So for the actual column, we ended up with $0 left, whereas our budget column maybe in some areas didn't line up just as well, but we allocated for that and spent less, we put less money in for savings. So let's say our goal for savings would have been 105. Well, we didn't get as much of that in because we spent more money on our groceries, more money on our shopping. So that's just an example of how we would end up with $0 left. Now, for our 50, 30, 20 rule, over here, you're just gonna make a circle, split it down the middle like a pie chart, and then go almost halfway up. Over here is gonna be our 50% needs. The smaller box is gonna be 30% wants, and then the smallest box is gonna be 20% savings. Okay? And we're not going to do anything with that, but I want you to copy it for right now because we're going to use that in a second. And the third budget we're going to do, we're going to make a small box over here. And our actual amount that we're left with could be anything. We don't know what it is yet. So it's going to look like this one. We're going to have our expenses column, our budget in the middle, and then our actual on the far right. Make some lines through it. Now this is a blank budget example. So on your blank piece of paper, this is going to be the assignment of the day. We're going to have, you're going to create 3 different budgets and turn it in by the end of class, okay? So the first budget is going to be the zero-based budget. You are going to have $3,000 to spend. And you're going to have to use 11 columns. So there has to be 11 columns going down, and your final amount down here has to equal $0. If it doesn't equal $0, you get 0 points for this. So you're gonna have to choose what you're gonna spend your money on. So you're gonna have your needs, your wants, and your savings in there. You can have however many you want of each one, but it has to all balance out to $0. And that does not mean that you can just have your budget and your actual identical each time. That's not realistic, okay? So make sure you're paying attention to that. Your other budget you're gonna complete is gonna be very simple. You're gonna make a 50-30-20 budget. You're gonna have 10 items in your 50% area. So you're gonna write 10 things in here without a price. You're gonna put 10 things in here that would be your needs. So things that you have to pay for to live. And you're gonna have 6 items listed in this box down here, which is your 30% area, and that's gonna be your wants. So now you're gonna have 10 needs and 6 wants. And the smallest box, your savings, you're gonna have 3 things for your savings. So 3 different things that you would put your savings into. So what kind of accounts? And don't just put savings as an emergency fund, for an example. So, or is it maybe you're saving up for a certain financial goal? So list that goal in that box. So you're gonna have 10 things listed here, 6 things listed here, and 3 things listed here for credit. And the last one that you're gonna complete and turn in is going to be a budget where you have your expenses, your budget amount, and then your actual amount you spent. You will again have 11 columns. Of your choosing, all including different needs, wants, and savings in there. However many you want. You will have, let's say, $3,000 to spend. Or really, you can differ from that. That's just an example. But at the very bottom, after your budget is done, you have to be left with either over $50 left or your $50 in deficit. So you will either have a budget surplus of $50 or a budget deficit of $50. And you need to have this to even get credit for this budget. So the 3 of those will be turned in by the end of class. Remember all the key terms we went over and the different budget methods we went over. You'll turn this in at the end of class, and I hope you guys understand what budgets are made for, because they're super beneficial and helpful when organizing your money, what you're going to spend things on, and if you're trying to save towards a financial long-term, medium-term, or short-term goal. So thank you so much for listening. Go ahead and start your budgets now.